What's going on, Star Wars fans? Welcome to another week of Star Wars Doctrines podcast. I believe this is podcast number 12. We're happy to still be with you. We're happy to still have you guys listening. If you are new to the channel, please don't forget to like and subscribe to see more future Star Wars content. That's what this page is all about. Anything there is to talk about involving the Star Wars universe, that's what we're talking about. So, really excited to talk to you guys this week. If you tuned in last week, we did a little bit differently, and probably going to be doing that quite a bit more often now, where we got me and my other partner here doing more of a discussion-based podcast, which I think got a lot of good feedback from you guys on enjoying the discussion side of it. So I know I enjoyed it.
Yeah, I enjoyed it. I like to be featured.
Yeah,
it's nice.
You like being here?
All right.
Well, good. Yeah. We're happy to have you. So, got a lot of good stuff going on in Star Wars right now. So it's a really exciting time to be making these videos. And this week, I'm going to talk to you guys. I mean, I know we normally do a lot of topics, but I think after talking a little bit, we decided to focus really on one really important topic that's going on in the Star Wars universe right now. And, if you listen to our last week's podcast, you caught a little bit of it. But this week we want to talk a lot about Emperor Palpatine and, his fun little featurette in the new trailer for The Rise of Skywalker. And what it means for Episode 9 and kind of the role that he's going to play in Episode 9. So, pretty exciting stuff, right?
Yeah, for sure.
Go ahead and dive into it.
All right, let's go.
Really cool. A lot of stuff that came out of Celebration as far as the new movie goes, and Palpatine, and obviously with Ian McDiarmid being there in person, gave a lot of cool things, obviously cool experiences for the fan, but he also gave him the opportunity to get into some interviews. And I don't know if you guys have had the opportunity to check out a lot of those interviews, but we obviously have, and we want to talk to you guys a little bit about those.
Seriously, just like watching every single interview I can find. I'm like, ooh, new interview.
Yeah.
Oh, new interview. YouTube's just full of everything, and just there's so much good stuff, and it just makes me so excited. Maybe next year, right?
We'll be there next year. Lots of speculation going on right now. I mean, you're probably going to have it between now and the time the movie comes out. Lots of clickbait videos about, this is why he's in the movie, this is what he's going to do. So I guess we just want to talk about that and just some ideas, some things we've been seeing floating around. Obviously, see what you guys think is the best, but we'll give you some of the stuff that we found. So one thing is really interesting in the interview that Ian did, the actor for Palpatine, is he talked about how adamant that George Lucas was when filming Return of the Jedi that Palpatine really was dead. I thought it was really interesting hearing him talk about that. It's kind of like...
No, I mean, I agree. Like, that was kind of so interesting. I was on I believe, episode 1 panel, which was a wonderful panel.
Right.
But getting to see him really talk about how... Well, first of all, Ian McDiarmid is just an amazing character, an amazing guy. Talking about how much he loved Palpatine and how he really wanted, him to be there. And he's talking to George like...
he wanted more, right?
He's like, all right, am I coming back? And George's like, no, he's dead. Done. Period. End of story.
That was funny. The conversation he was talking about he had with George. He was trying to come up with any way he could think of, right? That Palpatine could still be alive, and George just like shutting him down.
So, I mean, that brings up a lot of questions. Obviously, there's some sort of connection in 9. Something. Obviously, there's got to be something. But exactly what that means. George Lucas, obviously not really in charge of the Star Wars franchise anymore.
Right.
But we do know JJ's always brought Lucas onto the sets in 7 and also in 9. Lucas was on the sets helping out with the story because Abrams really just respects Lucas's opinion.
Which is awesome.
Agreed.
And Kathleen Kennedy, to her credit's even been very upfront about we want this to feel like George's thing still. Like the same stories he created, right?
Does something right, I guess.
Yeah, definitely.
But, just having Lucas on the set kind of, makes me wonder what role did Lucas play in making sure, how much was that, going back to his original thought. But, then again, Lucas has always kind of been questionable about how much he wants to reveal about a character. Always quick to sweep stuff under the rug and then reveal things later. Lucas's style has always been the reveal.
Well, just because he said it one way doesn't mean that, even in his headcanon, even though what he believes is going to happen is really what's going to happen, right? Because he's pretty secretive, right? And he does change his mind, and that's happened from time to time. But yeah, very good point you bring up. The fact that Disney's, in charge of Star Wars now, they could totally if he really did want Palpatine to be dead, there's no reason they can't retcon that and say, hey, actually, he is alive. So, it's cool to hear what George said. really cool to hear that from Ian. But I guess that's true. It doesn't necessarily mean that that's the case anymore, right? He could have survived, I guess.
Yeah, I'm thinking we'll find something different, and I'm thinking Disney will honor Lucas. But it'll be interesting to see.
Okay. Something else he talked about was that the laugh that's in the trailer, which is obviously why we're here, why we're even talking about this in the first place, is because of the laugh. That actually wasn't a new recording. That sound bit came from past Ian noises, right?
Exactly. All the random laughs the Emperor's had throughout the years.
Right. So interesting. I don't know. It sounded to me like an Episode 3 kind of laugh. Could be Return of the Jedi.
Honestly, got nothing, but
yeah. Anyways, it's interesting. So he didn't come in to record for the trailer, but obviously he knew he was going to be in it because he
did mention he was there for some days, doing what I don't know. Hopefully recording awesome scenes
for the new movie. Yeah, definitely.
But I guess just kind of leading into some questions on exactly what that could mean. I don't know. It kind of is interesting. Maybe the Emperor doesn't laugh in this. I hope not.
Yeah, you got to have his laugh, right? That's a good point. So Kathleen Kennedy also interviewed, made a really cool comment, and that's been floating around the internet a lot, said that they actually always planned on having Palpatine in the movies in some way, in some form, at some time. They just were trying to figure out how. And JJ actually said a very similar thing in an interview as well, which I thought was interesting. Anytime that they're talking about them having a plan is really cool. Like we've talked about, it's nice to see that they had ideas and things that they're bringing to the table that they've thought about from the beginning. Because a lot of people have said the trilogies felt like they've been kind of making it up as they go. I'm not necessarily arguing with that, with having different directors.
I agree. There's definitely been 7 to 8. There's definitely, I think it's pretty inarguable. You can feel the change of pace. You can feel there's discontinuity. And that leaves a lot of questions. How much was, let's do this together? How much is like, I'll make up my thing, you make up your thing, and we'll throw it together at 9 in the end.
Right. And well, I agree. Whether you like 8 or not, or 7 or not, there's definitely a difference with the directors, for sure.
Right. Exactly. And then, what you're saying, like, it's nice. Every time we hear, even if it's complete and utter bullcrap, every time we hear, hey, there was a plan. Hey, we've been thinking about this, with the Death Star, with Palpatine. It's just...
Well, it's a good sign.
It's a good sign. Agreed.
Yeah, definitely. All right. If you guys follow us on Instagram and Facebook, which if you don't already, please do check it out. A lot of the stuff. What the heck? Yeah, what the heck are you doing? A lot of the stuff, do it. A lot of the stuff that are coming into this podcast and all of our podcasts start on the page where we can make these posts. We use a lot of your comments. That's what we're going to do here. But there's a post that I'll put up here on the screen. Cool artwork of Palpatine. And he is basically using Snoke as a puppet, right? He's the puppet master and controlling and manipulating Snoke in this artwork. And so I thought I'd post that just to see what you guys thought on that and to see some of your guys' interpretations. Because whether it's true or not, I just thought it was a really cool piece of art and really cool concept, right?
Right, exactly. Agreed.
So got a lot of cool comments from you guys. I picked out a couple that we'd want to talk about here. And the first one was from... It's Jaw SMLG. That's the Instagram handle. The comment was, the dark side is a pathway to many abilities some consider to be unnatural. So, obviously, this is a line from Palpatine telling the tragedy of Darth Plagueis the Wise to Anakin. And I think we get what you're getting at here in this comment, that maybe Palpatine had some of the powers that Plagueis had, and maybe that's how he's making a return. What do you think, man?
Okay, well, no matter what, if we're going to go down this road with Palpatine, with the idea of creating life, etc., I do hope Star Wars takes the opportunity to be like, hey, here's some clarification on Plagueis.
That'd be cool.
Lost basically every single shred of information besides that quote in Episode 3 since the decanonization of the EU.
Right, because Plagueis, his entire book, stories which a lot of people love, is now legends, right?
Exactly. So I do think that'd be an interesting way to bring in, hey, did Palpatine... just talk about Plagueis a little bit. But, getting to your question, Palpatine and Rey. I don't know, man.
As there's been a lot of the speculation going on right now, okay, did Palpatine create Rey? Maybe if he's able to be alive through Plagueis' powers, maybe he could also have created life. you get into that a little bit. So maybe that's how he's alive in this, because he could save... I don't know, Plagueis couldn't save himself from death, right? Just others?
Right. And, I mean,
that's interesting.
Palpatine does get thrown out of Shaft. So,
Yeah.
probably dead. But, I don't know, I guess that kind of brings up a question, I guess, that I had with Jakku. We know, talk a bit about that, I think, in the end, right?
Yeah.
But Jakku is an important planet to Palpatine. There's a lot of information, actually, in the Aftermath series about Jakku, and we'll talk about that. But, okay, so Rey's on Jakku. Palpatine had an obsession with Jakku.
Seems like a weird coincidence, right?
It's a very strange coincidence. And, you know, honestly...
Coincidence? I think not.
I think, that, you know, just the idea that Rey's kind of been overpowered. I'm going to say it. Yeah. Rey outright has been ridiculously powerful from the get-go. And, you know, I'm all fine with a pretty powerful hero. We win that way. It's nice. But... You know, I always liked an explanation. Anakin was the chosen one. Luke was his son. It made sense.
Right, definitely.
And there's references in 7 and 8 that Rey's ridiculously powerful, that it's being stated that she's ridiculously powerful.
So you thinking that Palpatine could have something to do with that?
I'm hoping so. I think it would be a good way to kind of resolve some of the issues some people have with Rey and being overpowerful, and add a little bit of a nice backstory, even if we're not going to get like a Palpatine created Rey, but maybe Palpatine did something where when he found the child, however Palpatine existed, he embodied her with like more force power or something.
Okay.
Maybe like that's what really awakens in episode 7.
Palpatine's
like
awakening Rey's force, kind of?
Yeah.
All right. I could follow that. That's pretty cool. Yeah, there's a million ways you could look at that, and that's interesting. I wouldn't have thought of something like that. But I like the point you bring up with Rey and Jakku. I think that diving into the Vader comics a little bit, which, you know, like we've talked about them plenty of times on this channel. Really love the Vader comics, and there's a scene in there where Anakin's seeing like flashbacks and visions and everything, and he sees that Palpatine. It hints that potentially Palpatine could have been the one that created Anakin. Forever we've all been saying it was probably Plagueis who created Anakin, because he could manipulate midichlorians to create life. It makes sense. Anakin can have a father. He's lots of midichlorians. Qui-Gon says in episode 1 that he believes he was conceived by midichlorians. So Plagueis, Palpatine, one of the two. But I guess the idea, going on with what you said, if like that comic suggests maybe it was Palpatine who did it, then maybe he could have created Rey in a similar fashion.
Yeah.
Definitely possible. Well, especially, like you said, the Jakku tie in there, it's very interesting. So, next comment was from the Kessel Run blog.
Like the name?
Yeah, very cool name. So the comment here is very possible. Maybe Palpatine just used his body, needed a body that was bigger and stronger than his, and his was also probably destroyed. So I think what he's getting at is that maybe Palpatine was able to house his soul or his spirit, his force, into Snoke's body, right, and live through Snoke, basically.
Yeah, so I don't know how familiar with you guys are about the Darth Bane trilogy written by Drew Karpyshyn. Amazing trilogy. I know a lot of people are pretty sad that it's not canon anymore.
Oh, definitely.
But it's a Legends theory, and in the final book, Darth Bane is being concerned with the idea of old age and how it affects people. That he doesn't want the whole theory of the rule of 2 is right. The apprentice always gets stronger. Right. But he was worried that what if he got too old that his apprentice basically just killed him when he was, 90 and couldn't move.
Interesting.
And he's like, okay, well then she didn't, in the books it's Darth Zana, she didn't really understand the purpose, that she wasn't really stronger than him.
She's supposed to become more powerful than him to overpower him.
Right. Not wait till he's,
that way
grandpa.
That way the Sith keep getting more powerful.
Exactly.
It's the point of the rule of 2, right?
So he goes out and he finds a old Sith Lord, I don't remember the name. I'll look it up and put it in the comments. He basically found the way to immortality, and the idea was you create a clone body, and when you start getting old, there's a way to jump out of your body and get into that clone body.
Really?
You can also take over a body, but you have to be able to physically overpower that person's will and crush it. So this would be an interesting way to bring that sort of that theory before back into canonization. And it would be kind of interesting to see Palpatine do something like that, whether it's a possession of Snoke's body. And then it brings all sorts of questions into why Snoke looks like that. He's obviously has a very damaged body, so what would that mean with his association with Palpatine like that?
Interesting. Well, then, yeah, well, let's say that was what it was. Palpatine's been living inside of Snoke, going by Snoke. What then would happen to Palpatine after Snoke was killed?
Well, so in the original books, if you didn't leave before your host body died,
You would die?
You would die.
Oh, interesting.
Or there was the option that if you left as your body was dying, you couldn't inhabit someone else, that your body or your spirit would kind of get lost in some kind of force realm and didn't go well for you, basically. It was a very dangerous procedure to undergo. So that'd kind of be interesting to see, okay, let's pretend Palpatine got out in time. Where'd he go?
Maybe he just entered Kylo's body. Oh, that'd be interesting. Doubt it, but...
I doubt it, but I have to think about that.
Fun speculation. Who else is around? I mean, Rey.
So...
Well, Hux shows up.
Huh.
That'd be interesting. Anyways.
That would be super interesting and super weird.
Yeah, agreed. Cool. Next comment. Tim dot Lef BVRE. Sorry.
Guys getting simple names like Alan or something.
Yeah. He said it could also be a clone. We know he likes clones. So yeah, obviously Palpatine likes clones. Had the clone army created so that he could manipulate that war. So yeah, he's probably got good buddies in Kamino, right? Who can make pretty good clones. Probably were pretty advanced in their cloning by the time that Palpatine was the Emperor. So yeah, maybe he's creating clones. That was like a lot of EU stuff, right?
Right. Yeah.
Back in Legends, Palpatine did have clones of himself. So
yeah, I do think that could be an interesting thought, right? I mean, I'm not really like the clone theory. I wasn't really thrilled with that in the EU personally, but I mean, the idea that he could have I don't know. I feel like clones get weird when we get into the idea of consciousness, and I hope that whatever's around with Palpatine, I hope it's Palpatine.
Right, because you can say, okay, that's a clone of Palpatine, but like, is it really Palpatine? It's like you wouldn't say the clone of Jango Fett, who were the clones, was Jango Fett, because they didn't have the same personality. They weren't all wanting to be bounty hunters. So yeah, I agree. Now, to that point, if he cloned himself and then was able to do the Darth Bane thing you were talking about, where he could move his consciousness, his actual self, to that body, that would be different, right? Because that would be him. That would actually be him.
Right.
His, I mean, the Force has endless possibilities. Like, think about it. We're always learning new things about the Force. Like Luke's Force projection, we would have never thought that was possible until we saw that in Episode 8.
Right.
And it was really cool. Like, obviously, they got to be careful with what they do so that it doesn't look weird and, like, it's just like a superpower. Like, you don't want it to feel Marvel-ish, but at the same time, like, there's definitely cool things that they could explore with the Force, like Luke's Force projection. That was really, really well done. So that was some of the comments. We also got another thing I saw a couple comments about, some people debating in the comment section on that post, was about the Battlefront 2 campaign and the contingency plan for after the Emperor died, which ties a little bit into Jakku, but I think the comment was somewhere along the lines of, well, we know Palpatine's dead because the contingency plan in Battlefront 2, they have this whole plan of, so Emperor Palpatine essentially had a plan for if he died, these are the steps to follow, la-di-da-da, and it was just really cool to me that he thought ahead like that. So I guess the idea was that, well, they wouldn't have gone forth with that if he wasn't actually dead.
Right. I mean, part of the contingency plan was his theory that the Empire itself was to protect its leader, the Emperor Palpatine. So with him dying, that the entire Empire
had failed.
need to be punished, and that was kind of the point of really destroying the Empire.
Well, along the lines, like, do you necessarily think that means because that contingency plan was set into motion, do you necessarily think that guarantees that Palpatine was dead?
No, that seems like a ridiculous notion, does it not? Just the idea that, Palpatine's going to be super straightforward because he's never been manipulative, secretive, or had a secret agenda.
That's
ever.
True, right. He is probably the most manipulative, secretive guy in the entire Star Wars canon, right? I mean, I can't think of anyone else.
So I guess...
No, that's true, that's true. So just because all of his leaders and everybody thought he was dead and went forth with the plan, then they very well really could have thought he was dead and he did survive, and how would they know?
Exactly, and I do think with that point, with it being, it's a punishment, right? If the Emperor got to the point where he basically was dead.
Yeah, he'd probably still want him punished, right?
Yeah, you still get punished for screwing up that much.
True. Yeah, the whole contingency plan's very interesting. We'll talk about that in a sec. Let me talk about another theory real quick that I've been thinking about.
All right.
It's something that I've been sitting on because it occurred to me a little bit just while I was thinking about what the Death Star could mean in the trailer. Mm-hmm. And it got me thinking about other times we've seen like dark side presence. Obviously, we haven't really seen a dark side Force ghost. We've talked about that in the last podcast, that's not really a canon thing. It doesn't mean it couldn't be in the future. But other dark side presences. We've seen the dark side cave on Dagobah.
Right, the Cave of Evil.
Yes, Cave of Evil. We've also seen kind of a dark side cave on Ook 2 as well, with Luke, where Rey goes, and she's looking in the mirror and everything. That's supposedly a form of dark side. So there's obviously some sort of...
Name.
Than Dagobah's?
Yeah.
Yeah, no, definitely. It was manipulative, though. It was messing with her, right? Darkseid obviously had its own agenda, but the interesting thing, so let's focus on the Dagobah one then.
Okay.
The interesting thing about that is there's a Darkseid presence inside of that.
Right.
So the idea I had was that perhaps that's how we'll get Palpatine in Episode 9. Maybe the Death Star itself, because it was such an evil place, just consumed with the dark side, especially probably Emperor Palpatine's lair, his like place,
his
throne room. There you go. Was probably so dark and evil because of the stuff he was doing in there that it's a good chance that maybe his spirit, his force, his essence was able to turn that into a dark side cave when it all blew up and when he died.
Like his last minute sort of like act, maybe was doing something.
So maybe he's able to live through the Death Star itself, the pieces that are still there, and if you go inside of it, he can kind of, I wouldn't necessarily say haunt you, but kind of like how the Dark Side Cave showed Luke Vader, and he had to fight him and stuff. Like, obviously it wasn't like a real threat, probably couldn't have really killed him, but it was all in his head because the dark side was getting to him. So maybe that's how we'll get to see Emperor. Maybe inside the Death Star, he'll get to appear to Rey and fight her, and you know, I don't know, that'd be a really cool way, because then obviously, okay, one, he's not necessarily alive, but he's alive through the dark side, and he could still manipulate them, right?
Agreed.
I don't know, I just think that'd be an interesting way to do it.
Right, and I was thinking about the Cave of Evil, like, the scenes we really get that I would say are important are when Yoda goes, in the Clone Wars series.
Oh, right.
I think that's a very, kind of like a pivotal moment we see.
Yeah, I didn't even think of that.
Yoda gets kind of the first hint that, hey, Order 66 is coming, and Yoda knows about it from then on sort of thing. And kind of powerless to stop it, ultimately.
Right.
Also, I think Yoda fights a dark version of himself, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, so that's a little bit later. Not actually in the cave
itself.
That's not
in the cave, that's right. But just kind of like that concept of the cave is both showing premonitions and also like actually physically like kind of attacking the person, and just really Dagobah itself just being evil.
Right.
Kind of like all around it. And I think kind of...
It's part of the reason it made a good hiding spot for Yoda, so they couldn't sense where he was, right?
Exactly. And just, I don't know, I think that's kind of an interesting concept that you bring up. Going back to Legends stuff, we learn about Sith artifacts.
Right.
And I think we've kind of done a little good job with canonization with like kyber crystals, that the dark side has to corrupt the kyber crystal to make it red in color. Yep. And that was Sith artifacts. They could be corrupted by the dark side and then be kind of imbued with sort of power. Mm-hmm. So maybe the Death Star turns into a giant Sith artifact, like you're saying. Maybe a different kind of way of spinning at it. Like really embodying Darth Sidious's specific power.
Yeah.
And will kind of corrupt or mess with the user.
Well, you know, that actually leads me into the next theory that I want to talk about. I haven't seen this one talked about really yet, and it's one that we've talked about, and I've kind of thought about a little bit more going back to the Vader comics. Darth Momin is this ancient Sith Lord, and Palpatine has his helmet, and he actually gives it to Vader when Vader's going to Mustafar to make his castle. And from this helmet, exactly what you're talking about, you know, Momin apparently has found a way to embody his self. He's obviously dead, but to embody himself into this helmet, because he starts talking to Vader. He actually, like, one of the, if I'm remembering correctly, one of the pilots like puts the helmet on, and he like possesses them and makes them like kill the other pilots and stuff, and Vader ends up having to kill that pilot. because Moment's trying to fight him. So it's like super possessive, and his dark side presence is real, even though he's dead.
Right.
Like, there's something there. So he embodied himself into that artifact. So that's
cool.
exactly what you're talking about, and that's canon. So
right, it's a really cool way to bring stuff from Legends, and I've been impressed so far, kind of through comics, how they've kind of brought in parts of Legends, and I think
it'd be fun to see that in the movies.
Right, exactly. Fans of the EU should be thrilled with the comics, but seeing it on screen
would be even better.
Exactly, and that kind of leads into so many questions about what Palpatine can do with the theory of Darth Momin. I mean, Darth Momin, his entire essence, his job is trying to get back to life, really, so maybe we'll see something like that.
Definitely. Well, it's kind of like a Harry Potter thing. You know, if you guys are fans of Harry Potter, you know, there's the Horcruxes, and Voldemort splits his soul into these objects, and he's able to try and come back to life through those objects. So that's kind of the idea with this helmet, you know. It's very interesting because in the comic, that's why Vader builds his castle that way, is he's trying to, it's a tuning fork so he can basically be in tune with the netherworlds of the Force to try and get Padme back. Moment's telling him, if you build it this way through the helmet, if you build it this way, we'll be able to get your wife back. And really, Moment's just messing with him because he wants him to build the portal so that Moment himself can come back, which he does, and Vader ends up having to fight him. And it's really interesting. But, so obviously there's ways to come back from the dead. We know that that's absolutely true. So it's just about how much of this Palpatine knew how to do.
Right.
How much, you know, he's able to...
I mean, he was in possession of the helmet, so there's a chance Palpatine's got a trick or two up his sleeve, right?
Oh, I would say so. All right. So let's talk a little bit about Jakku and about...
Wrap this up with Jakku, I like it.
Yeah, about kind of things that we've been hinting at here. Talk about why it makes sense, because this is really interesting. Like, all of the talk I've seen going on, like a lot of people surprised about Palpatine. But let me tell you, I myself have been saying it, if you followed the podcast for a long time, that I think Palpatine can make an appearance in this, and I really believe it makes sense for the way they've set up the story.
Right.
And Jakku is a big part of that. So, yeah, let's just dive into that real quick as we kind of wrap this up.
For sure. So a lot of this will probably come from the Aftermath trilogy, right, which it's a pretty good read. Interesting stuff that talks about what happens like right after, or just kind of goes a little bit before episode 6, kind of leading up to the events of what will happen after episode 6. It's a good read.
Yeah, so where Jakku comes into play is that Palpatine actually has like a base setup on Jakku. He's got this historic site where basically an event had happened in the past that Palpatine believed was really important. And so important that he actually built an observatory over it on this, what are we calling it? It's the Plaintiff...
The Plaintiff Hand Plateau.
Hand Plateau, okay. And that's the site of this historic event. So Palpatine builds his observatory over it so that he can essentially observe the unknown regions from there.
Right.
Because we know he's obsessed with unknown regions as well, and there's lots of darkness out there that he's interested in, and so he builds his little observatory from Jakku. And then he starts doing a lot of things with Jakku. So he's got tons of Sith relics down there, whether it's holocrons,
other
probably,
Sith artifacts.
I was about to say, probably other things like Darth Momin's helmet, right, that we've been talking about.
Right, I know it mentions a few artifacts in particular in the novel, so...
Yeah. And this is interesting, too. He also has a borehole that leads all the way down to the planet core. So a borehole is typically something that, you know, it's like drilled down to the planet's core, trying to get water, oil, whatever you're trying to get out of it. But for whatever reason, Palpatine had a hole drilled down there, and that was had part of it to do with his contingency plan, right?
Right. And I do think it's interesting because part of what we know, I mean, Palpatine's pretty skimpish on his details of Jakku. So Jakku used to be like a lively planet. It wasn't a desert always. Right. Okay. But there's some sort of like life essence, I believe is what Palpatine calls it, that's really still exists in the center of the planet. Core. And Palpatine has an issue with that. He doesn't like it.
Yeah.
And it kind of leads me into a lot of questions on why didn't we learn up more about what that is? Yeah. But there's something about the planet's core that's important to Palpatine. And I think just the idea of this plateau is an event of Palpatine considers practically sacred in even the inhabitants of Jakku believe someone of mass importance used to live there when this important event happened, but like the details given in the novel are surprisingly sparse.
Yeah.
So it's kind of disappointing, but
also it's there, and it makes you think it wouldn't be there for
Right.
no reason, right? So the contingency plan is that Palpatine pretty much has Jakku set up like a bomb with this drill down to the planet core, that if he were to ever die, he would essentially, his way of punishing the Empire for letting him die would be to bring the entire Empire to Jakku and have someone basically set off the bomb and basically wipe out the entire Empire.
Right.
So that was their punishment, because they failed him. They let him die. Obviously, we know the contingency plan didn't necessarily completely go all the way through, because it was some people killed the people who were trying to set off the bomb. It ends up not working out. But check out the book if you want to learn a little more details. Won't do too many spoilers here. But for whatever reason, Jakku was very powerful with the dark side. It was a place that Palpatine did some things that we don't know about. And so, to me, the fact that they chose to start the trilogy on Jakku with Rey,
so
and they
it's
also
called the middle of nowhere.
right. There's got to be a reason, right?
Right, exactly.
Somehow it connects in some way. We just don't know how, but it's very interesting.
So I don't know. I'm trying to think. I'm thinking Rey and Palpatine will have to have some sort of connection.
Yeah, I mean, everything points to that. Everything involving Jakku seems to point to that, right?
Mm-hmm.
Whether he created her, whether he's given her some power, or whether he just knows more involving her. I don't know.
I definitely think there's some sort of connection. I mean, like you said, Jakku, why would we do all that? There's definitely something there. I'll be curious to see what they do, and how much they'll add more onto the Aftermath series, explaining more maybe about what that event was.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, hey, we do get a pretty decent time of the trailer spent on a desert planet.
Yeah, so they may be back at Jakku. That really might be Jakku, and they're learning more about it.
That'd be a real cool way to tie in episode 7, and the prequels with, like, I guess 1 through 6 with Palpatine.
Right.
And then even, like, canon books. That'd be an interesting way to really, as JJ's been saying, bring it all together.
Right, which is, that's what's going to satisfy us. It all gets tied together correctly. So we'll wrap it up here. Let me ask you one final question. Just want to know what you think. Is Palpatine physically alive or not?
It's a no for me.
You don't think so?
No.
Okay.
I don't think so.
All right. I'm kind of right there with you. I'm liking either that we're going to see him maybe appear through holocrons, or I really like my Death Star idea with that maybe being a dark side presence, a dark side cave type of thing.
And I do think seeing some projections of him or something wouldn't be out of the question in that sort of Death Star cave.
I agree. Well, and that's cool, because it wouldn't necessarily be a Force ghost.
Right.
It would be getting to see him in person, but I'm right there. All right, guys. Well, if you stuck with us this long, thank you so much. If you haven't subscribed, please make sure to do so. Also, check us out on Instagram, Facebook. Like I said, that's where all of the stuff starts, all of the discussions and everything. And like I said, if there's anything to talk about in Star Wars, we're talking about it. So we'll keep you up to date on all the good stuff going on. And really do thank you guys so much for your support. Any willingness to share our videos and pages is much appreciated. We'll see you next week. May the Force be with you guys. Don't forget to like and subscribe, because
it is your destiny.